They say weddings are a celebration of family, of gratitude. But on the day my daughter-in-law married my son, she pulled me aside and said, "Sign over the house. You're old, you don't need it." When I refused, she slapped me so hard I hit the wall. Nobody stopped her, not even my son. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply walked out, made a single phone call, and within hours, everything was gone. What happened next? You have to see it to believe it. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from. For 40 years, I worked at the county clerk's office. 40 years stamping birth certificates, death certificates, and marriage licenses. 40 years watching families at their most important moments, while I returned each night to a quiet house where only Kevin was waiting for me for dinner. After I lost my husband when Kevin was just 8 years old, every dollar I saved had one purpose: to give my son what I never had. I remember when Kevin first told me about Jessica. His eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen since he was a little boy, asking me to read him bedtime stories. "She's special, Mom," he'd said. "She's different from all the others." I would smile and nod while serving the breakfast casserole I'd learned to make just the way he liked it, with extra cheese and slightly crispy on top. On Sunday mornings, Kevin used to come have breakfast with me. It was our sacred ritual. But little by little, those visits grew further apart. First it was, "Jessica has plans too." Then, "We have to see her family." Until my Sundays became silent, and I learned to make coffee for just one person. When they asked for help with the wedding, I didn't hesitate for a second. I sold the few pieces of jewelry I had left from my mother. I took out savings I had set aside for any emergency. I wanted Kevin to have the wedding of his dreams. I paid for the venue, a beautiful villa with a view of the ocean. I hired the best caterers, the photographer I'd seen in a magazine, all without him asking, because a mother doesn't need to be asked. The truth is, for months, I had felt Jessica pushing me out of Kevin's life. The phone conversations became shorter, the invitations to dinner scarcer. But I thought that after the wedding, when we were officially family, things would get better. How naive I was. The rehearsal was held at the same villa where the ceremony would be the next day. I arrived early, as I always do, carrying a small bouquet of roses from my garden for Jessica. A simple gesture, I thought, of welcome to the family. The villa was spectacular. Golden lights reflected in the water of the infinity pool, and beyond, the Pacific Ocean stretched out like a sheet of blue silk under the sunset. The waiters I had hired moved silently, serving glasses of champagne and small appetizers. Everything was perfect. It had all come out of my savings, but seeing Kevin's smile as he practiced his vows, I felt that every dollar had been worth it. I watched from a corner as Jessica directed everyone like an orchestra conductor. She wore a pristine white dress for the rehearsal, no less, and her hair was pulled back in an updo that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Around her, her family and friends surrounded her like satellites, laughing too loud, talking too loud, taking up all the space. Mrs. Peterson? Brenda, the wedding planner, approached me with her professional smile. "Everything is turning out beautifully. The venue you chose is truly spectacular." "Thank you, Brenda. I just want Kevin to be happy." "I can tell you love him very much," Brenda said, and something in her tone made me look at her more closely. There was an expression in her eyes that I couldn't quite decipher. While Kevin was rehearsing his entrance with the best man, I saw little Lily, Jessica's niece, who was going to be the flower girl. She was only 6 and was hiding behind a pillar, overwhelmed by all the noise and movement. I approached her with a small cookie I had saved in my purse. "Are you okay, sweetie?" Lily nodded shyly but accepted the cookie. Her big brown eyes reminded me of Kevin when he was little. "You're going to look so pretty in your flower dress tomorrow," I told her softly. "Are you Kevin's grandma?" she asked. Before I could answer, Jessica's shrill voice cut through the air like a knife. "Lily, what are you doing over there? Come here right now." The little girl ran off, and I was left alone by the pillar, suddenly feeling like an intruder at a party I had paid for myself. The rehearsal continued. Kevin stumbled over his lines twice, nervously, and Jessica corrected him each time with a little laugh that didn't reach her eyes. I saw how Jessica's mother, a woman with too much jewelry and too much makeup, whispered something in her friend's ears while looking at me. I didn't need to hear the words to know what they were talking about. When the formal part was over, everyone headed to the main hall for the rehearsal dinner. I looked for my seat at the tables. I had helped Brenda with the seating arrangement and was surprised to find myself at a table in the back, next to some of Kevin's distant cousins I barely knew. Jessica and Kevin presided over the main table, surrounded by their inner circle. No one seemed to miss my presence there. During dinner, I overheard snippets of conversations about the condo Kevin and Jessica had seen at the marina, about the honeymoon plans to the Maldives that I had financed, about the bright future that awaited them. No one mentioned who had made it all possible. After dessert, when some guests were starting to say their goodbyes, Jessica approached my table. She was holding a half-empty glass of champagne and a smile I didn't recognize. "Helen, can I talk to you for a moment?" Her voice sounded sweet, but there was something sharp underneath it. "In private?" I stood up and followed her to a side terrace, more secluded, where the party lights barely reached. The sound of the ocean was stronger here, and a cool breeze moved the white curtains that decorated the space. "Tomorrow is going to be a very special day," Jessica began, swirling the glass between her hands. "The beginning of a new life, for Kevin and me. Yes, I'm very happy for both of you. That's why I wanted to talk to you. You see, Helen..." She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. "Kevin and I have been talking about the future, about how we want to live, about what we need to be truly happy." I waited in silence, though something in my stomach began to twist. "The thing is, we've seen a beautiful condo at the marina, modern, with ocean views, perfect for starting our family, but we need a substantial down payment. And well..." She took a step closer. "Your house is in a great location. It's worth a lot of money." "My house?" "Kevin told me it's yours, completely paid off. $450,000, right?" Her smile widened. "We thought it would be the perfect wedding gift. We would take the new condo. And you, well, you could move into something smaller, more appropriate for someone your age." The words took a moment to cut through the confusion in my mind. "Are you asking me to give you my house?" "Not asking, Helen. Expecting." Her tone changed, becoming colder. "You're an older woman. You live alone in a house that's too big. We're young. We're going to have children. It makes more sense, don't you think?" "Jessica, that house it's all I have. It's where Kevin grew up, where all my memories with his father are." "Memories are in your heart, not in the walls," she replied impatiently. "Besides, it's not like we're going to leave you on the street. We could help you find a small apartment, closer to downtown, more convenient for you." I stared at her, trying to understand if I was really hearing what I thought I was hearing. "Jessica, I'm not giving you my house." Her smile vanished completely. "Excuse me?" I said, "I'm not giving you my house. It's my home." The silence that followed was thick, heavy. I could hear the party continuing in the distance, the laughter and conversations seeming to come from another world. "Helen," Jessica said, and now her voice trembled with barely contained rage. "I don't think you understand the situation. Kevin is your only son. We are his family now, and a family helps each other. I have helped. I paid for this wedding. I paid for the honeymoon. That's the least you can do." Her voice rose dangerously. "Kevin has taken care of you his whole life. He sacrificed opportunities for you. It's time you give something back." "Jessica, lower your voice, please. Don't tell me what to do. You're a selfish old woman who doesn't want to let go." I heard footsteps approaching. Some of the bridesmaids appeared on the terrace, drawn by the commotion. Among them was little Lily, who immediately hid behind one of the young women. "Everything is fine," I said softly, trying to de-escalate the situation. "We were just talking." "It's not fine," Jessica shouted. "This woman refuses to help her own son after everything Kevin has done for her. Jessica, please." And then it happened, so fast I barely had time to process it. Jessica's hand came up, and the slap echoed like a gunshot in the night. My cheek burned, and the metallic taste of blood spread through my mouth where I'd bitten my tongue. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the ocean seemed to stop. I saw Lily's eyes, huge and terrified, before she hid completely behind her companion. I saw the shocked faces of the other women. I saw Brenda appear in the doorway, an expression of horror she tried to professionally conceal. And I saw Kevin, my Kevin, who came running when he heard the commotion, who stopped in his tracks when he saw the scene, who looked at my reddened cheek and then at his fiancée, and who said nothing. Nothing. He just stood there, mouth agape, his eyes darting between Jessica and me, like a child who doesn't know which toy to choose. I brought my hand to my cheek, feeling the heat of the slap spread. Everyone was looking at me, waiting for a reaction, waiting for screams, tears, drama. Instead, I straightened up. I smoothed my skirt. I looked Jessica in the eyes for a moment that felt like an eternity. "Good night," I said simply, and I left. I walked slowly through the main hall, where some guests were still drinking and laughing, oblivious to what had happened on the terrace. I picked up my purse from the table. I said a polite goodbye to the few who came over to say hello. And I walked out to the parking lot. Only when I was inside my small Toyota, with the doors locked and the engine running, did I allow my hands to tremble on the steering wheel. But I didn't cry. Not yet. Because I knew exactly what I was going to do next. The drive home was like driving through a thick fog. The lights of the city flickered by, but my mind was completely focused on one thing. The small blue notebook I kept in the top drawer of my desk, where I had written down all the phone numbers of the wedding vendors. I parked on my quiet street, where the streetlights cast yellow circles on the damp asphalt. My house greeted me in silence, familiar and cozy, with the scent of the basil plants I tended on the balcony. I poured myself a glass of water and sat in the kitchen, under the fluorescent light that flickered slightly. The blue notebook was exactly where I'd left it, next to the photographer's invoice and the receipts for the advance payments I had made. $450,000, Jessica had said, the value of my house. The house where Kevin had taken his first steps, where I had patched up his scraped knees, where we had spent countless nights watching movies on the couch after his father died. The house they now wanted me to give away as if it were a cheap trinket. I picked up the phone and dialed the first number. Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time, so if you're enjoying it, please subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. It was 11:30 at night, but Brenda, the planner, had put her personal number on the contract with a note that said, "Available 24 hours for emergencies." This definitely qualified as an emergency. "Hello?" Her voice sounded sleepy but alert. "Brenda, it's Helen Peterson. I'm sorry to call you so late." "Mrs. Peterson." There was a pause, and I could hear her sit up in bed. "I saw what happened tonight. Are you okay?" Her genuine concern surprised me. In my 40 years of work, I'd learned to distinguish between professional courtesy and real interest. This was the latter. "I'm fine, Brenda, but I need to talk to you about tomorrow." "Of course. What do you need?" "I need to cancel everything." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for several seconds. When Brenda spoke again, her voice was careful, professional. "Everything, Mrs. Peterson? Everything that's in my name. The villa, the catering, the flowers, the photographer, the music, everything I hired and paid for. Mrs. Peterson, I understand you're upset, but the wedding is tomorrow. The guests are already in town, some are coming from other cities." "Brenda," I interrupted her gently, "did you read the clauses of the contract we signed?" Another pause. I could hear the sound of papers being moved. "Yes, of course I read them. You have the right to cancel up to 12 hours before the event, but... So you know I'm within my rights?" "Yes, technically, but..." "There are no buts, Brenda. Cancel everything. Tonight." I waited, listening to her breathing on the other end of the line. I knew she was calculating, weighing the professional implications against what she had witnessed that night. May I ask why? Because I no longer want to pay for a wedding where the bride hits me and my son says nothing to defend me. The words came out with more force than I had intended, but it was the plain and simple truth. "I understand," Brenda said finally. "And the groom? Does Kevin know about this decision?" "Kevin will have to learn to make his own decisions and face the consequences. It's about time." "All right, Mrs. Peterson, but some vendors will give us trouble for the last-minute cancellation, and some deposits are non-refundable. Whatever deposits are lost, are lost. It's a price I'm willing to pay." "Okay. I'll start right now. The villa, the caterer, the florist, the photographer, the band. Anything else? Were the fireworks included too? Yes, the fireworks for midnight. Cancel them too. Perfect, Mrs. Peterson. Brenda hesitated for a moment. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. After hanging up with Brenda, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat in the living room, the blue notebook open on my lap. One by one, I crossed out the phone numbers I would no longer need to call. Brenda would handle most of it, but there were some contracts that only I could cancel directly. At 12:15, I called the car service I had hired to transport the guests from the hotel to the villa. Mrs. Peterson? Is something wrong with tomorrow? I need to cancel the bus service. Cancel? But the wedding is tomorrow. There won't be a wedding anymore. But ma'am, my drivers are already confirmed. The buses are ready. I'll pay you the full cancellation fee. Don't worry about that. I just need you not to pick anyone up tomorrow. Are you sure? This is going to cause a lot of confusion. I'm completely sure. After convincing the car service, I called the hotel where some out-of-town guests were staying. I couldn't cancel their rooms, but I could make sure there were no special services that I had arranged for them. The hardest call was to the dress shop where I had ordered a new suit for the occasion. Not because there was a contractual problem, but because the owner, another older woman, had put so much care into helping me choose something elegant but appropriate for the mother of the groom. I'm sorry to bother you so late. Helen dear, what's wrong? Is there a problem with the suit? No, the suit is perfect. It's just that I'm not going to need it anymore. What do you mean you're not going to need it? The wedding is tomorrow. There won't be a wedding anymore. What? Did they break up? So suddenly? It's complicated. Can I return the suit tomorrow? Of course, don't worry about that. But, Helen, are you okay? You sound different. She had known me for years. I had bought the dress for my husband's funeral there, and later, the suit for Kevin's graduation. She had a good eye for reading people. I'm fine. Maybe better than I've been in a long time. When I finished all the calls, it was almost 2 a.m. I sat on the couch, looking at the notebook full of crossed-out numbers, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and energy. It was as if I had been holding my breath for months, and finally, I could exhale. The phone rang. It was Kevin. Mom, what have you done? His voice sounded desperate, frantic. In the background, I could hear Jessica screaming something I couldn't make out. Hello, Kevin. How are you? How am I? Mom, Brenda just called me. She says you've canceled everything. That's right. You can't do that. The wedding is tomorrow. There are 150 guests. The guests can go home early. They'll have a free Saturday. Mom, this is insane. You can't cancel your own son's wedding. I'm not canceling your wedding, Kevin. I'm canceling my payments. It's the same thing. No, it's not the same. If you want to get married tomorrow, you can. But you'll have to find your own way to pay for it. But everything is already set up. Everyone is going to show up expecting a party. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you let your fiancé hit me. Silence. A long, tense silence. Mom. Jessica was very upset, very nervous about the wedding. She wasn't herself. Really, Kevin? That's your defense? I'm not defending what she did, but you did nothing to stop it. You just stood there while she humiliated me, in front of all those people. I didn't know what to do. It all happened so fast. You knew exactly what to do, Kevin. You just chose not to do it. I heard Jessica screaming in the background, demanding to talk to me. Kevin told her to calm down, but his voice had no authority. Mom, please, we can fix this. Jessica is willing to apologize. Oh, really? And are you? Me? Why do I have to apologize? For staying silent, for not defending me, for letting her treat me like that. Mom, it's not that simple. Yes, Kevin, it is that simple. Jessica managed to grab the phone from him. Her voice came through, hysterical, screeching. Helen, you can't do this. It's my wedding, my special day. Your special day ended when you hit me. It was a mistake. I was nervous. I apologize. Too late, Jessica. You're a bitter old woman. You've always been jealous of our relationship. Good night, Jessica. I hung up the phone and unplugged it from the wall. I didn't want any more calls that night. I stayed awake until dawn. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I didn't want to. There was a mental clarity I hadn't felt in years, as if a fog I didn't know existed had finally lifted. I made coffee when the first rays of sun came through the kitchen window. My cheek still hurt a little, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the release I felt in my chest. At 7 in the morning, the landline started ringing. I had plugged it back in because I knew Brenda might need to confirm some cancellation details. But it wasn't Brenda. It was Jessica's mother. Helen? It's Carol, Jessica's mother. Good morning, Carol. Helen, please, you have to reconsider. The kids are devastated. The kids are 32 years old, Carol. They're adults. Yes, but you know how weddings are. Everyone is nervous. Things are said that aren't really meant. Do you think Jessica didn't really mean to hit me? Well, She was very upset. Carol, with all due respect, your daughter asked me to give her my house. When I told her no, she hit me. And your son-in-law did nothing to stop her. What would you have done in my place? She didn't know what to say. Look, Helen, I understand you're upset, but you can't ruin my daughter's life over one moment of... I'm not ruining anyone's life. I just stopped paying for my own humiliation. After hanging up with Carol, I decided to go for a walk. I needed fresh air and wanted to avoid more phone calls. I put on my most comfortable sneakers and headed out to Westwood Park, where I used to walk on Sunday mornings. The city was slowly waking up. The bakers already had their shops open, the smell of fresh bread mixing with the salty air coming from the ocean. I walked past the bench where I sometimes sat to read the paper, past the newsstand where I bought a crossword puzzle magazine on Fridays. Everything seemed sharper, more present, as if I had been seeing the world through a fogged-up window and someone had finally wiped it clean. In the park, I ran into Margaret, a neighbor who also used to get up early for a walk. Helen, how are you? Isn't today Kevin's wedding? Good morning, Margaret. Yes, it was supposed to be today. Supposed to be? Did something happen? Let's just say plans have changed. Margaret looked at me with curiosity but was too polite to press. We walked together for a while, talking about the weather, the new construction in the neighborhood, simple, pleasant things that had nothing to do with canceled weddings or broken promises. When I got home, I saw Kevin's car parked on my street. He was sitting on my front steps, his head in his hands. He was wearing the suit he had bought for the wedding, but his tie was loosened and his hair was disheveled. Hello, Kevin. He looked up. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying. Mom, please, you have to help us. Where's Jessica? At the hotel, crying. She hasn't stopped all night. And the guests? Some have already left. Others are asking what's going on. It's a disaster, Mom. I sat down next to him on the steps. For a moment, he was again the little boy I used to comfort when he had nightmares. Kevin, do you know why I did this? Because Jessica hit you. I know. It was wrong. Not just because she hit me. Do you know what she asked me before she hit me? Kevin shook his head. She asked me to give her my house. This house where you grew up. She told me I was too old to live here alone. I saw his eyes widen with surprise. She asked you what? $450,000, Kevin. That's what this house is worth, according to your fiancé, and according to her, I should give it to you as a wedding gift. Mom, I didn't know anything about that. I swear. You didn't know? Not even that they've been looking at condos at the marina. Kevin's expression changed. He did know that. Well, yes. We've seen some condos, but we never talked about asking you for your house. That was Jessica's idea. And when she told you her plan, what did you say to her? Kevin was silent. What did you say, Kevin? I told her you would never agree to something like that. But you didn't tell her it was wrong to ask me? Well, you didn't tell her it was inappropriate? You didn't tell her that this house means more to me than money? You didn't tell her you would find another solution? Mom, things aren't that simple. Yes, Kevin, they are that simple. I stood up and took out my house keys. Where are you going? Inside. I have things to do. Can I come in with you? I looked at him for a long moment, my son with his wrinkled suit and lost child eyes, waiting for me to rescue him as I always had. Not today, Kevin. And I went into my house, closing the door softly behind me. From the kitchen window, I saw him stay on the steps a little longer, looking at his phone, probably deciding who to call to fix the mess. Finally, he got up, straightened his suit, and left. That afternoon, Brenda called to confirm that all the cancellations had been successfully completed. Some vendors had given her trouble, but she had handled everything with professionalism. "How did the bride and groom take it?" I asked. "Honestly, Mrs. Peterson, I don't think they've realized the full extent of it yet. They're trying to find a last-minute venue, but on a Saturday afternoon, I understand. Mrs. Peterson, if I may say so, I think you did the right thing. In my 15 years of planning weddings, I've seen a lot of things, but I've never seen a mother treated that way." "Thank you, Brenda. And what will you do now?" It was a good question. I looked around my kitchen, with its walls full of photos of Kevin, its cabinets full of his favorite foods, his special mug still in the dish rack. Now, I'm going to live my life. That night, for the first time in months, I had a peaceful dinner. I made myself an omelet, poured myself a glass of the wine I saved for special occasions, and put on some music. Not wedding music, no waltzes, no bridal marches. I put on some old jazz, which always reminded me of my youth, when everything was possible and the future stretched endlessly before me. Tomorrow I would call Arthur, my old lawyer friend. It was time to put my affairs in order, completely in order. The following Sunday dawned with that golden California light that makes everything look like a painting. I woke up early, as always, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel that pressure in my chest that had been with me since the wedding preparations began. I made coffee, watered my balcony plants, and sat in my favorite armchair with the newspaper. There was no news of canceled weddings in the local section, of course. Life went on as normal for the rest of the world, while somewhere in the city, 150 guests were probably waking up and wondering what to wear to a ceremony that no longer existed. At 9 in the morning, the phone rang. It was Arthur Bennett, my old friend, the retired attorney who had been my late husband's colleague at City Hall. "Helen, my dear, I just spoke with Brenda. Is what she told me true?" "That depends on what she told you. That you canceled the wedding after the bride hit you." "Then it's true." Arthur sighed deeply on the other end of the line. "How are you, Helen?" "Surprisingly well, Arthur. Better than I've felt in a long time. Brenda told me you might need some legal advice." "That's right. Could you come over this afternoon? I think it's time to review my will and some other documents." "Of course. Does 5 o'clock work for you?" "Perfect." After hanging up, I decided to treat myself to something I hadn't allowed myself in a long time: breakfast at my favorite neighborhood cafe. I dressed carefully, choosing my favorite blue blouse, the one that made me feel elegant without being showy, and walked downtown. The morning was beautiful. The cobblestone streets of the old town gleamed after the overnight rain, and the air had that freshness you only find near the ocean. I passed by the old mission, where a few couples were posing for wedding photos. I idly wondered if any of them were living the drama I was supposed to be living at that moment. At the cafe, the owner greeted me with his usual smile. "Mrs. Peterson, how are you? Wasn't today Kevin's wedding?" "Good morning. Plans changed." "Oh? Did they postpone it?" "Something like that." I smiled, ordering my usual coffee and avocado toast. I sat at my regular table, by the window that overlooked the small plaza. From there, I could see families strolling with their children, elderly couples holding hands, tourists consulting maps with confused expressions. Normal life, simple life, life without drama. I was finishing my breakfast when I saw a familiar SUV pull up, belonging to Jessica's mother. Carol got out, along with 2 other women I recognized as Jessica's aunts. They were heading straight for me. "Helen," Carol said, approaching my table with a tense smile. "What a coincidence finding you here." "Good morning, Carol. Ladies, can we sit with you for a moment?" I nodded. Although I knew perfectly well this was no coincidence, they had been looking for me. "Helen," Carol began once they were seated, "we've come to ask you to reconsider your decision. The kids are devastated." "The kids?" "Kevin and Jessica. Jessica hasn't stopped crying since last night. Kevin is like a lost soul. And the guests? Some came from New York, from Chicago. I understand it's an awkward situation," I said calmly, "but it wasn't my decision to create that situation. But it was your decision to make it worse," one of the aunts intervened. You could have waited until after the wedding to sort out your problems. My problems? I looked at them one by one. Do you know what your niece asked me before she hit me? The three of them exchanged glances. Yes, we know, Carol admitted. And we agree, it was poorly phrased. But Jessica is young, she's impulsive. Jessica is 32 years old, Carol. She's not a child. But you're older, you're wiser. You could have handled the situation with more diplomacy. The word diplomacy echoed in my ears like a jarring bell. Diplomacy? You think I should have been diplomatic after she hit me? Well, maybe hitting you was wrong, but you also could have been more understanding of her request, the other aunt said. After all, young people today need more help getting started in life. I stared at them for a long moment, trying to process what I had just heard. Are you suggesting I should have just given her my house? Not given, Carol hurried to clarify. But maybe a loan? Some temporary help? My house is worth $450,000. It's not $5,000 to furnish an apartment. But you live alone, Helen. It's a very large house for one person. And there it was again, the same argument Jessica had used. As if living alone was a crime, as if needing space was an undue luxury for a woman my age. Ladies, I said, standing up and leaving money on the table, I believe this conversation is over. Helen, please. Carol stood up too. We just want things to go back to normal. Normal was your niece respecting me. That option no longer exists. But think about Kevin. He's your son. That's precisely why I'm doing what I'm doing. I walked out of the cafe feeling stronger than when I had entered. Every encounter, every attempt at manipulation only confirmed that I had made the right decision. I spent the rest of the morning at home, organizing papers for my meeting with Arthur. I found my original will, the property deed for the house, and some other legal papers I hadn't looked at in years. Everything was in order, but there were some things that definitely needed to change. At 12:30, Kevin showed up at my door. This time, he wasn't alone. Jessica was with him, though she stayed several steps back, as if afraid to get too close. Mom, can we talk? Of course, Kevin, but she stays outside. Mom, Jessica wants to apologize to you personally. I'm not interested. If she wants to talk to me, she can write me a letter. Please, Mom, just 5 minutes. I looked at Jessica over Kevin's shoulder. She was wearing a black dress as if she were in mourning, and her eyes were swollen from crying. But even in her seemingly vulnerable state, there was something about her posture I didn't like. A tension, as if she were holding something back. 5 minutes, Kevin. Just you. Kevin turned to Jessica and said something in a low voice. She nodded, but I saw her clench her fists. Mom, Kevin began once we were alone in the living room. This is turning into a scandal. Everyone is talking about it. And? Mom, it's humiliating. The guests are asking what happened. The vendors are furious. The hotel we were going to stay at is demanding explanations. Kevin, in all of what you're telling me, have you at any point thought about apologizing to me? Apologize for what? For not defending me when your fiancé hit me. Mom, I was in shock. I didn't know how to react. You knew perfectly well how to react. You chose not to. It's not that simple. Yes, it is that simple. This time, my voice rose. Your fiancé hit me in front of a crowd of people and you did nothing. Nothing, Kevin. What did you want me to do? Start yelling at her in front of her whole family? I wanted you to be my son. I wanted you to defend me like I've defended you your whole life. Kevin was silent, staring at the floor. Do you know how many times I've defended your decisions in front of others? I continued. When you dropped out of college, when you lost that job, when you decided to move in with Jessica after only knowing her for 3 months. I've always been on your side, Kevin. Always. I know, Mom. You know? Then why, when I needed you to be on my side, did you choose to stay silent? Because I didn't want to create more problems. More problems than your fiancé had already created? Kevin finally looked me in the eyes. Mom, Jessica made a mistake. A very big mistake. But she's still the woman I want to marry. Then marry her, Kevin. But do it with your money, not mine. Is that what you want? For me to get married without your blessing? What I want is for you to take responsibility for your decisions. If you want to marry a woman who hits your mother, That's your choice. But don't expect me to finance it. Mom, please. We can't afford another wedding. We already spent all our savings on the honeymoon and the apartment. What apartment? Kevin blushed. The condo at the marina. We already signed the purchase agreement. You already signed? With what money? With our savings and… Well, we were planning to ask you for help with the rest. Were you planning to ask me for help? Or were you planning to ask me for my house? That was Jessica's idea, not mine. But you didn't stop her. I didn't know she was going to ask you like that, so… Directly. Kevin, did you want my house? The question hung in the air between us. I saw Kevin struggle with the answer, how he weighed honesty against convenience. I thought maybe, when you were older, when you couldn't take care of the house by yourself anymore. When I was older? When? At 80? At 90? I don't know, Mom. I hadn't thought about the details. And in the meantime, would you wait for me to die to get the house, or would you prefer I moved into a nursing home so you could sell it sooner? Mom, that's horrible. I would never think something like that. No? But you did think I should give it to you now, when I'm 70 years old and in perfect health, because your fiancé decided you needed it. Kevin ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he'd made since he was a child when he felt cornered. I don't know what you want me to say, Mom. I want you to tell me the truth. You believed you had a right to my house. You're my mother. I'm your only son. It was going to be mine someday anyway. There it was. The truth, raw and simple. Someday, Kevin, when I die, not now, when I have a perfectly valid life ahead of me. I know. Jessica was impulsive. She shouldn't have asked you for that now. Is the problem the when or the what? What do you mean? Is the problem that she asked for the house now, or that she asked for the house at all? Kevin didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence was answer enough. I think this conversation is over, I said, standing up. Mom, wait. What are we going to do about the wedding? That's for you two to figure out. I've already done what I had to do. What if we find a way to get married today? Something simple? At the courthouse? That sounds perfect. You just need 2 witnesses and $60. Would you come? The question caught me by surprise. For a moment, I saw again the little boy asking me to come see his school play. No, Kevin, I wouldn't. Why not? Because I can't bless a marriage that began with your fiancé hitting me. But I'm your son. That's precisely why. Kevin left without another word. From the window, I saw him meet Jessica on the street. She asked him urgent questions, gesturing wildly. He shook his head several times. Jessica started yelling, although I couldn't hear the words from my window. Finally, they got in the car and drove away. At 5 o'clock sharp, Arthur arrived with his worn leather briefcase and a serious expression I hadn't seen on him since the days after my husband's funeral. Helen, tell me exactly what happened. I told him everything, from the beginning. Jessica's request, the slap, Kevin's passivity, the cancellations. Arthur listened without interrupting, occasionally taking a few notes. And Kevin knew about Jessica's plans for your house? Not exactly, but he had an idea, and he did nothing to dissuade her. I see. What do you want to do legally? I want to make sure that neither Kevin nor Jessica can ever claim anything from my estate. Ever. Ever is a very strong word, Helen. Are you sure? Completely sure. Arthur opened his briefcase and took out some documents. Very well. We can do several things. First, we can amend your will so that Kevin is not your sole automatic heir. We can set conditions, or even disinherit him completely. Can I do that? In this state, you can disinherit a child for just cause. Mistreatment or egregious disrespect could be considered just cause. Does egregious disrespect include letting your fiancé slap your mother? A judge could interpret it that way, yes. Then do it. Do you want to disinherit him completely? I thought for a moment, looking at the photos of Kevin that covered the living room walls. Baby Kevin, Kevin at his first communion, Kevin on his graduation day, Kevin at his recent birthdays. Not completely, but I want him to know that his actions have consequences. We can stipulate that he inherits only a minimal portion, the statutory share that the law requires, and the rest can go to whomever you choose. Who could I give it to? A charity, friends, any cause that matters to you. I thought of Brenda, who had risked her professional reputation to help me. I thought of the daycare center where my mother had spent her last happy years. I thought of all the older women who were probably going through situations similar to mine. I want you to prepare several documents, Arthur. And I want Kevin to receive a copy of all of them. Are you sure? Once he sees the documents, there's no turning back. There's no turning back anyway. That night, after Arthur left with the list of legal changes we wanted to make, I made a simple dinner and sat on my patio overlooking the ocean. The lights of the city stretched out before me like fallen stars, and the sound of the waves came softly on the night breeze. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. It wasn't the peace of avoided conflict, but the peace of a decision made. The peace of knowing that, finally, I was living on my own terms. Tomorrow would be another day, with its own challenges and decisions. But tonight, sitting on my own patio, in my own house, surrounded by my own things and my own memories, was completely mine. And that was more than I had had in a long time. The peace of that night on my patio was the last moment of calm I would have for several weeks. The next day, Arthur arrived early with the documents we had discussed, and a few more he had prepared overnight. "I've been thinking about your situation, Helen," he said as he spread papers across my kitchen table. "There are several things we can do to protect you completely." "What kind of things?" "First, the new will. I've drafted 3 different versions, depending on how severe you want to be." He showed me the documents. The first version reduced Kevin's inheritance to the minimum statutory share and designated the rest to charities. The second disinherited him completely for family mistreatment. The third was intermediate. Kevin would inherit half, but with very specific conditions. What kind of conditions? That he publicly apologizes to you, that Jessica does the same, and that they both attend family therapy for at least a year before they can access the inheritance. The idea was almost comical to me. Kevin and Jessica in therapy, being forced to confront their actions, and if they don't meet the conditions, then the inheritance automatically goes to the charities. I like the third option. Perfect. Now, I've also prepared a revocation of power of attorney. Have you ever given Kevin power to act on your behalf? No, never. Good, but it's better to be safe. I also want you to sign a document that specifies any future donations or gifts to Kevin must be notarized and have at least 2 independent witnesses present. Do you think that's necessary? Arthur looked at me seriously. Helen, in my 40 years as an attorney, I've seen families destroyed over money. I've seen children who manipulate their elderly parents, who pressure them, who even threaten them. I'm not saying Kevin will go to those extremes, but after what's happened, I understand. Do it. We spent the morning signing documents. My new will, the preventive revocation of power of attorney, a document specifying my future medical care wishes, and finally, a letter addressed to Kevin explaining the reasons for these changes. Do you want me to send him the documents today? Arthur asked. Yes. I want him to know exactly where he stands. After Arthur left, I stayed at home organizing other aspects of my life that I had neglected during the months of wedding preparations. I called my bank to review my accounts, contacted my doctor to schedule checkups I had postponed, and even called a landscaping company to come prune the trees in my yard. It was strange how the crisis had put everything into perspective. Suddenly, I had the energy for things I had been putting off for months. The phone rang in the mid-afternoon. It was Brenda. "Mrs. Peterson, how are you?" "Fine, Brenda. And you? How have you handled all this professionally?" "Better than I expected, actually. Some vendors were upset at first, but when I explained the circumstances, well, most of them understood, especially the women." "The women?" "Yes. The florist told me she'd been through something similar with her daughter-in-law. The caterer has an 80-year-old mother and said he would have done the same thing you did. Even the photographer, who was furious at first about losing the job, changed his mind when he heard the details." "How did they find out the details?" "Well," Brenda paused. "Lily, the flower girl, told her mother what she saw, and her mother told a few friends. You know how these things are." The phone rang again. This time it was a voice I didn't recognize. "Helen Peterson?" "Yes, who's speaking?" This is a reporter from the local paper. I'd like to talk to you about the events of last weekend. I have no comment. Ma'am, I understand it was a very difficult situation for you. I would just like to hear your side of the story. My side is my business, but I believe your story could inspire other women in similar situations. I hung up the phone. An hour later, someone knocked on my door. Through the peephole, I saw a young man with a notebook in his hand, obviously the reporter. I didn't open the door, but I could hear him talking to my next-door neighbor, Margaret. Do you know Mrs. Peterson? Do you know anything about a canceled wedding? I couldn't hear Margaret's response, but after a few minutes, the reporter left. That evening, Kevin appeared at my door with a copy of the legal documents Arthur had sent him. His face was red with anger. "What is this, Mom?" he shouted, waving the papers. "Are you disinheriting me?" "Kevin, lower your voice. The neighbors will hear you." "I don't care if they hear me. My own mother is disinheriting me for defending my fiancé. Your fiancé hit me, and you chose not to defend me. This is insane. You can't do this." "Yes, I can, Kevin. And I have. But I'm your son. Your only son." "Exactly. You're all I have in this world. And yet you chose to stay silent when that woman humiliated me." Kevin stormed into the house without an invitation and collapsed onto the living room couch. "Mom, please, we can fix this. Jessica is willing to apologize, in person, in front of anyone you want." "Oh, really? And are you?" "Why do I have to apologize?" "Read the documents, Kevin. It's explained very clearly in there." Kevin reviewed the papers more closely. "Family therapy, public apologies. Mom, this is ridiculous. It's what you have to do if you want your inheritance. I shouldn't have to do anything to get what's mine by right." And there it was again. That sense of entitlement. That his inheritance automatically belonged to him. "Kevin, nothing I have is yours by right until I die, and even then, only if I decide so. You're my mother. You're supposed to take care of me. I have taken care of you for 32 years. Now it's your turn to take care of yourself." Kevin got up from the couch, pacing back and forth in the living room like a caged animal. "Do you know what people are going to say when they find out about this? What are they going to say? That you're a bitter old woman who can't stand to see her son happy." His words hurt more than I expected, but I kept my voice calm. "If that's what you think of me, Kevin, then maybe it's better if things stay as they are. It's not what I think, it's what people will say. And you care more about what people say than about what I feel?" Kevin stopped short. "That's not what I said." "It's exactly what you said." He stood there, the crumpled documents in his hands, looking at me as if I were a stranger. "I don't recognize you, Mom. This isn't you." "You're right, Kevin. This isn't me. The old me would have put up with it in silence, would have pretended nothing happened, would have continued to finance your life without asking for anything in return. But that woman no longer exists. And who is this new version? She's a woman who respects herself. A woman who doesn't allow herself to be humiliated, not even by her own son." Kevin folded the documents and put them in his pocket. "If you change your mind—" "I'm not going to change my mind, Kevin. The conditions of the will are very specific." "Yes, they are. And if I meet them, the apologies, the therapy, all of it, then you will inherit half of my estate, as specified. And the other half? It will go to places where it will do some good." Kevin nodded slowly. "How long do I have to decide?" "All the time you need. But in the meantime, the documents are signed and filed." After Kevin left, I made myself a cup of chamomile tea and sat on my patio. The city lights twinkled peacefully under the starry sky. And for the first time in days, the phone didn't ring. The weeks that followed were like waking up from a long, heavy dream. For the first time in years, my days didn't revolve around Kevin's needs or his wedding plans. Instead, I dedicated myself to rediscovering who Helen Peterson was when she wasn't being a mother. The painting class at the local community center turned out to be a revelation. It had been 30 years since I'd touched a paintbrush, since before Kevin was born, but my hands remembered the pleasure of mixing colors, of watching shapes emerge on the canvas. The teacher, a woman my age named Diane, quickly became a confidante. "You know what I love most about painting?" she told me one Tuesday afternoon as we cleaned our brushes. that every stroke is a decision, and you can choose whether to stick with that decision or paint over it. I wish life were that easy to correct, I replied. Who says it isn't? Her words stayed with me for days. Maybe I had been so focused on not being able to change the past that I hadn't really considered what I wanted to do with the future. The most dramatic change came when I decided to sell the house. The decision wasn't impulsive. For weeks, I had been walking through the rooms, noticing how every corner was filled with memories of Kevin as a child, but no longer of Kevin as an adult. His room was still decorated, as it was when he was 18. In the kitchen, I still kept his favorite cereal that he no longer ate. The backyard was designed for a child who used to play there, not for a 70-year-old woman living alone. When I called the real estate agent, Diane was the first person I told. "Are you sure?" she asked as we painted a seascape. "It's a big decision. It's my house, but it's not my home anymore. The difference is important." "And where are you going to live?" "I've been looking at condos near the beach. Something smaller, more manageable, with a patio where I can paint. And the money from the sale? Part of it will go to my new home. The rest? I have some ideas." One of those ideas had started to take shape during my conversations with Diane and other women at the community center. There were more stories like mine than I had imagined. Older women pressured by family, manipulated, or simply ignored when they tried to maintain their independence. In my day, a 75-year-old woman had told me, older women were expected to be quiet and grateful, to accept any crumb of attention as if it were a favor. "And now?" I asked. "Now we have options, but many women don't know it." That conversation gave me an idea I couldn't shake. The condo I chose was in a modern building, a 5-minute walk from the beach, 2 bedrooms, an open kitchen, and a patio with an ocean view that perfectly fit an easel and a comfortable chair. It was half the size of my house, but it felt 3 times brighter. Kevin showed up the day they came to appraise the house. "Mom, is it true you're selling?" "Good morning, Kevin." "Yes, it's true. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it's my house, not yours." But it's the house where I grew up. All my memories." "Your memories go with you, Kevin. You don't need the walls to keep them." Kevin sat on the living room couch, looking around as if he were seeing the place for the first time. "How much is it worth?" "More than I thought. The neighborhood has appreciated a lot in recent years." "And what are you going to do with the money?" "Part of it I'll use to buy my new condo. The rest will be for a special project." "What kind of project?" I told him about my conversations at the community center, about the stories I had heard, about the idea I had been developing. "I want to create a foundation, a place where older women can find legal, emotional, and practical support when they face family or financial conflicts." Kevin looked at me as if I had lost my mind. "A foundation?" "Mom, where did you get that idea?" "From experience. From realizing I'm not the only woman in this situation. But that's going to cost a fortune." "It's my money, Kevin. But it's my inheritance." There it was again. It always came back to the same thing. "Kevin, have you thought about the conditions of the will? The public apologies and the therapy?" "Mom, that's humiliating. More humiliating than allowing your fiancé to hit me?" Kevin fell silent. "Where's Jessica, by the way?" I asked. "We've separated, temporarily. She's living with her mother while we figure things out." "And what have you decided?" "That maybe we'll get married next year, when things calm down." "When things calm down?" "Kevin," she hit me. "That doesn't calm down. That's something you confront." "I know, Mom. That's why we're in therapy." I was surprised to hear that. "In therapy?" "Yes. Jessica started first, for anger management. I started last week. Individual therapy or together?" "Individual for now. The therapist says we first have to work on our own issues before we can address the couple's issues." It was more progress than I had expected. "And how's it going?" Kevin ran his hands through his hair, his usual nervous gesture. "It's hard. The therapist asks me questions that I don't like." "What kind of questions?" "About how I treat you. About whether I really see you as an independent person or just as my mother. About whether I think I'm entitled to your things just because I'm your son." "And what have you answered?" That maybe I haven't been as fair to you as I thought." It was the first time in months that Kevin had admitted any kind of responsibility. "And Jessica?" She's working on her control issues. Apparently, it has to do with her childhood, with always feeling financially insecure. That doesn't justify what she did. No, it doesn't justify it, but at least it explains why she did it. We sat in silence for a while, surrounded by the boxes I had been filling with my belongings. Mom, about the conditions of the will. Yes? If I meet them, are you really going to go ahead with the foundation? I'm going to go ahead with the foundation either way, Kevin. It's something I want to do for myself, not something I'm doing to punish you. And if I don't meet them, then the foundation will receive your share of the inheritance as well. It will be larger, it will be able to help more women. Kevin nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? Of course. Will you ever forgive me? The question caught me off guard. Not because I hadn't thought about forgiveness, but because I hadn't expected him to ask. Kevin, it's not a matter of forgiveness, it's a matter of respect. What do you mean? I can forgive you for staying silent when Jessica hit me. That was a moment of shock, of not knowing how to react. But what I can't accept is that you continue to think that my assets automatically belong to you, that my decisions about my own life have to be run by you. But you're my mother. Yes, I'm your mother. But I'm also Helen, a person with her own wants, needs, and rights. Kevin stood up and walked to the window overlooking the garden where he had played as a child. You know what hurts the most about all this? He said without turning around. That you're right. About what? That I've never seen you as a whole person. You've always been my mother, not Helen, who is also my mother. And now I'm starting to get to know Helen, and I like her more than I expected. He turned to me with a sad smile. Do you think it's too late to start over? It's never too late, Kevin, but it has to be a real start, not a return to the past. What does that mean? It means that if you want to be a part of my life, it has to be with the woman I am now, not the mother I was before. Kevin nodded. And the conditions of the will still stand? They're not about punishing you anymore, Kevin. They're about making sure that any relationship we have in the future is based on mutual respect. That evening, after Kevin left, I sat on my patio with a glass of wine and a feeling I hadn't had in years. Hope. It wasn't the hope that things would go back to the way they were. It was the hope that things could be better than they had ever been. 3 months after moving into my new condo by the beach, I received a letter that would change everything. It wasn't from Kevin or Jessica or even a lawyer. It was from a woman in another state. Dear Mrs. Peterson, it began. I read about your story in a newspaper article. I'm 73 years old, and I'm going through a similar situation with my son and his wife. Could you tell me how you found the strength to stand up for your rights? I feel very alone. It was the first of many letters that would arrive in the following weeks. Apparently, the reporter had finally managed to publish a version of my story without mentioning specific names, but with enough detail for women in similar situations to feel seen. Diane was with me when I opened the 5th letter that morning. We had established a routine of having breakfast together on my patio on Wednesdays, planning the details of what we had already decided to call the Dignity Foundation. Look at this, I said, showing her the letter from a woman whose son had emptied her savings account to buy a new car. Every story is different, but the pattern is always the same, Diane observed. What pattern? Women who have given everything for their families and who, when they try to set boundaries, are made to feel selfish or ungrateful. That afternoon, as I was painting on my patio, I heard familiar voices on the street below. It was Kevin, but he wasn't alone. I recognized Jessica's voice, although it sounded different, softer, less aggressive than the last time I had heard it. When they rang the doorbell, I waited a moment before opening. Kevin was nervous, as always when he had something important to say. Jessica was at his side but kept a certain distance, as if unsure of her welcome. Hi, Mom, Kevin said. Can we talk to you? Of course, come in. I led them to the patio, where I had iced tea and some cookies I had made that morning. Inez, Jessica finally said. I came to apologize. A real apology, not the one I should have given you months ago. I looked at her carefully. Her eyes were clear, without the manic glint I had seen the night of the slap. I've been in therapy, she continued, and I've realized a lot of things about myself that I don't like. My therapist says I have serious issues with control and financial security that stem from my childhood. That doesn't justify what you did, I said softly. No, it doesn't. Nothing justifies hitting another person, especially the mother of the person you love. It was despicable. Kevin shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I also came to apologize for my behavior, he said. For not defending you, for thinking I was entitled to your things, for not seeing you as a whole person. And you see me differently now? Yes, they answered almost in unison. Jessica leaned forward. Helen, have you heard of the Dignity Foundation? The question surprised me. Why do you ask? Because I've been reading about it, about how it helps older women defend their rights. And I realized that you're the woman from the newspaper article. Kevin looked at me with admiration. Mom, is it true? You've created a foundation? I'm in the process of it, yes. With the money from the sale of the house? Part of it. Jessica wiped her eyes with a tissue. You know what hurts the most about all this? That you've taken the worst thing I did to you and turned it into something good for other women. I didn't do it to turn anything, Jessica. I did it because it was the right thing to do. I know. And that makes it even more impressive. Kevin cleared his throat. Mom, Jessica and I have been talking about the conditions of your will. Oh? We want to meet them. All of them. Even the public apologies. Jessica nodded. Especially the public apologies. I think it's important for other women to know that what I did to you was wrong. That defending yourself was the right thing to do. And the family therapy? We've already started, Kevin said. We go together once a week, in addition to our individual sessions. And how is it going? It's hard, Jessica admitted. But necessary. I'm learning to manage my anxiety about money without trying to control other people. And I'm learning to have difficult conversations instead of avoiding them, Kevin added. I looked at both of them, searching for signs of manipulation or performance. But what I saw was sincerity, weariness, vulnerability, but sincerity. And what about the wedding? I asked. We've decided to postpone it indefinitely, Kevin said. Until we're sure we're together for the right reasons, not out of dependency or fear. And what if it turns out you're not right for each other? They looked at each other. Then we'll face it, Jessica said. But in a mature way, without hurting others in the process. That afternoon, after they left, I stayed on my patio watching the sun set over the Pacific. There was something profoundly peaceful in that moment, as if a storm that had lasted for years had finally passed. 6 months have passed since the wedding that never was. The Dignity Foundation is now a reality, with small but functional offices in downtown Seacliff. We have helped over 50 women navigate family conflicts, set financial boundaries, and find legal support when they needed it. Kevin and Jessica have met all the conditions of the will. Their public apologies, published in the same newspaper that had told my story, have inspired other families to have difficult but necessary conversations. They continue in therapy, individually and as a couple, and are rebuilding their relationship on a more solid foundation. I still paint on my patio every morning, watching the sun rise over the ocean. My life is smaller in some ways, a condo instead of a house, fewer material possessions but infinitely richer in the ways that matter. Diane has become the sister I never had. The women from the foundation are my chosen family. And Kevin, slowly, is becoming the son I always hoped he would be. Respectful, considerate, and capable of seeing his mother as a whole person. Yesterday, I received a letter from another woman who had read about the foundation. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to live on our own terms, she wrote. This morning, as I read her letter on my patio with the sun warming my face, I smile for real for the first time in years. It's not the polite smile I used to use to hide my discomfort, nor the forced smile of keeping the family peace. It is the smile of a woman who has found herself. The smile of the quietest victory of all, that of living authentically. On my coffee table is the photo album I saved when I sold the house photos of baby Kevin, of my late husband, of happy moments from the past. But next to it is my sketchbook, full of plans for the future. New programs for the foundation, landscapes I want to paint, trips I want to take. The past has its place, honored and loved, but the future belongs to me. And that, I'm discovering, makes all the difference in the world.